Allegory of the Cave is something that is part of a very important book in our history by Plato, a very famous Greek philosopher who lived in Athens about 2,500 years ago. And the book was called The Republic. Now, Plato, fascinating philosophical personage who is really considered to be the founder of Western political philosophy. His teacher was Socrates, and we probably wouldn't know very much about Socrates because he didn't write anything. He kind of taught on the streets. But Plato made him the main character in most of his work. And of course, Plato's most famous student was Aristotle. In the Republic, Plato diverts into this allegory in which he's trying to demonstrate the importance of having the most enlightened person, he considers to be the philosopher king, be the ruler of the republic, the ideal republic. So he's comparing forms of government, and he uses the allegory of the cave as kind of a metaphorical way of explaining this Plato's explaining it to his students in Athens. So we're going to use it in a somewhat different way. It has a lot of resonance in our lives today. So it's a very powerful metaphor. And you're looking now, this is something I took off the internet, the parable of education, Plato's metaphor of the cave. But you see in this drawing, you can see a cave, you see a fire, you see prisoners who are locked facing a wall in which shadows are cast. And the story goes like this. They've been there their entire lives, chained to this wall. Behind them, there's this fire, which is producing light and throwing shadows up on the wall. So it's sort of the equivalent of a movie screen, for lack of a better analogy. And there is this little platform, and you can see a parade of people coming along this platform, with a wooden thing on their head, and on top of this are these different icons, statues of various objects. And the statues, of course, the shadows of those statues are thrown up on this wall. And so the story goes, the people in the darkness, in this, semi-darkness, unable to see any light other than the dim light thrown up on the wall, and these images going by, develop an entire life around these images, and they determine their social standing. Who can identify the sequence of the statues coming, and which one is which, and so forth and so on. So that's their lives in this rather untenable situation. So, and there's a wonderful quote which I throw in parenthetically by Martin Luther King Jr. Everything we see is a shadow cast by that which we do not see. But here's the fire. Here's the people with the little icons or statues on their head, and the folks chained looking at the wall. Then what we have, as the story progresses, is one person breaks away from those chained and begins what we must imagine to be a very frightening journey. He or she peers over the wall, and first of all, is extraordinarily painful to live your entire life in darkness and semi-darkness, and to look directly at a fire is just, it'd be like the equivalent of you walking out and looking at the sun. I mean, it's just impossible. It's painful, and so that the first decision is like, wow, this really hurts. Should I even continue? And as the eyes begin to adjust, begins to realize that this whole kabuki dance of people coming by with these statues on their head, and realizes like, well, hey, I've literally been in the dark about what's really going on. And the person may decide at this point, like, maybe I'd just rather go back down, hang with my friends. But he or she decide to make this perilous journey. And here you see a drawing of the person saying, what? So they're looking over the wall. This is really what's going on. And then, the pain of dealing with this bright fire. And then the beginning of the very scary journey through this dark tunnel. And of course, the person beginning this journey has no idea that there's any value to it. It's dark and it's scary. You're leaving everything that you know and is comfortable for you behind you. And you don't have any guarantee that you're going any place in which there's any real value to it. So this takes an act of internal courage and fortitude. And now we see the person crawling along this dark tunnel. And this is what I call this is the what the hell am I doing phase of this particular journey, because at this point you no longer have the light of the fire and you don't have the light yet of the sunshine. So you're in absolute complete darkness, you're alone, and you still have really no idea if there's any value to this crawling on your hands and knees journey. But for the story to progress, the person must continue, and they do. And so they approach, now as they start to approach the entrance to the tunnel, to the passageway, they if they thought the fire was bright, the sunlight is really bright. And even before they've gotten out of the tunnel, there's this whole period of, the person is literally blinded by this light. It's very painful. And again, there's this question, which is like, maybe this is a good time to kind of reverse course and just go back down to what I know, to the people I know, to the life that I was comfortable and happy in, but just not go back down. And so, as the person approaches there, feeling, this is too bright and I'm kind of blinded by it, it's really, really a difficult time. But the person steps out as their eyes eventually adjust, and they step out and they see houses, trees, lakes, people interacting with one another, and the person at this point really has the profound experience of reality, which is that everything I've been doing for my entire life has been an illusion and a fraud. And all these contests we were engaged in when we were in the cave, where we thought we were so hip and so cool and so smart, are ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous and meaningless. They had no meaning whatsoever at all. And they were completely devoid from reality. And so, is this a good feeling or a bad feeling? Well, it's probably good and bad. There's a bad, it's kind of the shattering of your entire identity has been created around this illusion and the social reinforcement of the illusion. Your identity has been formed in this nonsense. So that's not good, but there's a good side, which is like, okay, I'm actually seeing the world as it is. So now, and we see a drawing of, the person was saying, wow. Then we have what is probably the most fascinating part of the allegory of the cave, which is the decision. Do I go back down into the cave to liberate others? Or do I just say, they're happy and I'm happy? I think I'll just stay up here and enjoy the real world and all the wonderful things that I'm going to be involved in, and the social opportunities and the insights and books and libraries and all these kinds of things. Or do I have a moral obligation to go back down into the cave and liberate those people from this life that we were all living together, which is completely phony? And he decides to go back down. Now, for Plato's purposes, this was the philosopher king who really understands what's going on, and the philosopher king going back down to the cave is really he goes down as the leader, essentially, to bring people out of ignorance and to rule society intelligently and gracefully and honorably. For our purposes, the allegory of the cave it might be your life of criminality, addiction, whatever that is. When you thought that the color of the handkerchief that you were hanging out of your back pocket was really something very important. When you thought that fellow gang members were really your friends until they rolled over on you when something happened. Whatever the illusion was in your life, that your life was built around, and you came to this understanding like, this isn't it. This has all been phony. That experience of both insight and angst from understanding how much time you've lost living in the world of illusion. We're using the allegory of the cave more for that purpose. So this person, this courageous person who's had this insight about their lives, feels the obligation to go back down and liberate these other people. And of course, his eyes, or her eyes, have now adjusted to the light of the real world. And so as the person goes down, they are no longer skilled at identifying the shadows. They're blind, essentially, because they would have to go through an entire period of adjustment again to join their fellows. And they don't really want to at that point, Why would I want to play those silly games again? And there's a wonderful thing in Plato's book where he asks the person he's interacting with, the student that he's teaching, Socrates, what do you think, what will happen to this person when they go down? Will they be welcomed? And the person says, I'll try to kill him. They'll try and kill him. Why will they try and kill him? Because if it is painful to hear that everything you know and everything you're doing is meaningless. And so you will try to hold on to that sense of competence based on a lie rather than accept the truth. And we know, let's look at our world. We know how many of the world's moral leaders have been killed. We can start with Christ, who's certainly a huge example, but there are many, many examples in our lifetime of Martin Luther King Jr., many of the world's leaders who were enlightened leaders, who were saying things that were unpleasant to hear for people, and would have shaken them out of their prejudice, their hatred, their ideology. The solution became kill them. It's really fascinating. In the middle of this coronavirus scare, you have this wonderful person, Dr. Fauci, who's speaking truth to the American people about the dangers of the coronavirus, and they've actually had to get security for him, because there are people who think that they should kill him, kill the messenger, because they don't like what he's saying. He's saying the truth, but the truth is they don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear the fantasies that somehow or another everything's going to go back to normal, or that there's some pill you can take that's going to make it go away, whatever. So this is I think the reason this metaphor, this analogy has been around for such a long time is because it speaks very deeply to us as human beings and as a society, in terms of our ability and our willingness first to unshackle ourselves from our lives filled with illusions and falsehoods, and to make that evolutionary step toward a more realistic view of ourselves, a more realistic view of others and of our society. And of course, this doesn't happen once in our lives. We break out of one illusion only to find ourselves in many cases in the middle of another one. So there's an evolutionary process that we go through as human beings if we don't get stuck. Some people just get stuck. You've heard the expression, died at 30, buried at 70. Somebody who just completely ossified and could never learn anything new as they got older and had opportunities to learn more, who isolated themselves in their own little tomb of false, of illusionary things, fantasies, and so it speaks. I think the first time I read this, I was in college. I then have presented it many times over the years, and it's interesting. Every time I've presented this to an audience in a teaching and therapeutic community, people have stood up and said, "That's my life." Okay, you're describing my life, and you're describing the difficulties I've had turning away from old things, my image, the friends that kept me chained, essentially in a gang, or in drugs, or in sexual situations, or domestic violence, or those were the people who chained me, and when I tried to break away from them, they held on to me. They didn't want me to get away, because I was then a threat to them. The fact that I was seeing the world in a different way and behaving differently was a threat to their life of lies and illusions and fantasies and unrealities. And so I think it has, we got to thank Plato and for producing something which, even though it's been so many centuries since he developed this metaphor, that it still has such enormous resonance for us today in our lives.